Good day. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show. This is December 5th, 2018, episode 78. I'm back from a little vacation. It's great to be back. Wanted to get you guys kind of caught up on the current events going on here. Right now, the George Herbert Walker Bush funeral is taking place, the state funeral in Washington, D.C. It is really, truly amazing to watch this. I watched Bush 43 give his remarks about his father, and very, very awesome. It's really cool to see the Trumps next to the Obamas, next to the Clintons, and next to the Carters. I mean, to see four presidents sitting there, and then George W. Bush is on the other side of the aisle with Laura and sitting next to Jeb and his wife. It's This is what America. This is what makes America so awesome, so great. It's this peaceful transfer of power. It's truly remarkable. I think it's really, truly an American experience, and I think this is what makes our country so great. So great to see these five presidents, including Bush 41, who's in his casket there. His body. I mean, to have six presidents in that room, it's five living, one passed away. It's truly remarkable. I love it. This is really what makes this country great. And we've got all this rhetoric and discussion and debate and Twitter wars and all of that, and we debate issues. I mean, this is awesome. We can debate issues, but as I repeatedly say, it's not personal. Okay, it does not have to be personal. I mean, I know we personify things and we want to just make everything so deep and so personal, but it's really about ideas. I have a friend who talks about, this friend is very a Trump supporter, very Republican friend, and tells his liberal friends that, hey, if I agreed with Hillary Clinton's issues, I would vote for her. I totally agree with that. If Hillary Clinton had nice conservative issues and things that she really believed in and that she would push forth if she was president or any other politician, I would totally support that. Totally. I agree with my friend. This is all about the issues. But we want to make it so personal, and we want to make the attacks so personal. Look at the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. That was not about the issues at all. It was just personal attacks. Really weird. That was just so weird. But politics has always been that way, I guess. And so I am just so grateful for George Washington and the Founding Fathers who set up our Constitution, who set up a limited government, and set up a peaceful transition of power from George Washington to John Adams. I mean, that was the example. And every president has done that. FDR is an exception, would not give up office, thought he was a king, was going to die in office no matter what. But besides FDR, everyone else 1 or 2 terms as president. And so that is amazing. And to see the Trumps and the Obamas and the Clintons and the Carters and the Bushes all together like that is very unifying. I hope they have a good photo op. I hope the presidents get together for a photo op. I hope so. This is very unifying for our country. That in all the rhetoric and all the hatred and stuff, most of that is on the fringes, totally on the fringes. Okay, this country is truly amazing. As I say over and over again, people, we get along, we pay our taxes, we do a great job. And so it's just that is what we do. And so I'm just so happy about, I mean, this country is truly remarkable and how we can get along. I'm just very pleased with how we get along in this country. And this funeral, to come together, to reminisce about Bush 41. It's just really awesome. It's really awesome. There's something super touching. So George W. Bush did a great job talking about his father. He held it together. He kind of cracked up at the end emotionally. It's just very awesome. These men I truly love. I truly love them, and so grateful for people like them. I don't always agree on their issues and their policies, but I mean, I really love them for all the goodness that they have inside them. Something very touching that makes me kind of emotional is Bob Dole standing and saluting George Herbert Walker Bush. It's very touching. And I'm just so grateful for these men, especially these World War II heroes that we have to look up to. Get a little emotional. Now, Larry Elder has been really very good at pointing out, unfortunately, like with the media, of course, now the media loves Herbert Walker Bush. You know, when he's passed away and he's no longer in power, they love him. And yet, you know, I remember when he was president, I was 5 years out of high school, and I remember those days. I remember meeting Dan Quayle when he was campaigning for George Herbert Walker Bush. Shook his hand, shook Marilyn Quayle's hand, had a really fun meeting with her out in Fargo, North Dakota when she was out there at a football game, and got to meet her. She was traveling without Dan at that time. It was great. And so there's a neat article in a Breitbart written by Joel Pollack. He talks about how we're mourning in this and stuff. And he talks about the accomplishments of Bush 41. And this reminds me, I was just at Disney in the Hall of Presidents, and people applauded when George Herbert Walker Bush is introduced in the Hall of Presidents. People applauded. It was really cool because he had passed away just the day before. It's neat for us to show honor to him. So this article, he talks about his heroism in the Second War. He was one of the among the country's youngest naval aviators. He was shot down by the Japanese over the Pacific. And many other people in the plane were killed. Then he presided over the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was amazing. And his Gulf War victory was truly amazing. He got in and got out. I mean, I think he was just totally vindicated, I feel, that he really did the right thing there. He's great. You know, we know him as a decent and honorable man and stuff. You know, but the media, remember when he was president, the media was just totally all over him. When he drove his cigar boat, his big speedboat, they would just get all mad at him. They made up this huge story that he was at this grocery store and he didn't understand the technology and he was a bozo and totally out of touch. You know, it just totally amazing. Michael Knowles was really good about talking about one of his greatest accomplishments is that he was a great vice president for Ronald Reagan. I mean, they didn't agree on things. Ronald Reagan was more conservative than Herbert Walker Bush. And Herbert Walker Bush called his economics voodoo economics once. Barbara Bush was probably more pro-choice, like Laura Bush. You know, he gave us, but, you know, one of the greatest accomplishments, I think, of Bush 41 was Clarence Thomas. Good grief, Clarence Thomas. Bush 41 would not yield through all of that. It reminds me a lot of the Donald hanging in there with Brett Kavanaugh. It was almost the exact same thing, the same techniques used against Clarence Thomas as used against Brett Kavanaugh. Donald Trump hung in there with Brett Kavanaugh. He's on the bench. And Bush 41 hung in there with Clarence Thomas. That is just huge. Clarence Thomas has been our most conservative judge. I mean, Supreme Court justice. Unbelievable. So Herbert Walker Bush is just totally applauded. But, from conservatives, he just, he promised no new taxes and he raised taxes. I mean, this is anathema to our policies and our issues, okay? I mean, taxes are just really the core, I think, of conservatism, because that's the power and the freedom that we lose when people take our money away from us. And so, anyhow, the media has all this feigned love for him, and many people, Rush Limbaugh, that, the media is playing this up even further, just like the John McCain funeral, just to go after the Donald and to take pot shots at him. But, that's okay. It's great to honor the president and to honor the presidency. I really think it's important to honor the presidency as we honor Congress and the Supreme Court. That's those are the three branches of government. They need to be honored and respected, and we need to respect the Constitution and keep those three branches of government vibrant and powerful so they can check one another's power. It's very good. I want to move on to the story of last week of Donald Trump Jr. NPR runs this story and falsely accuses Donald Trump Jr. lying about when these real estate deals were done by the Trump organization with Russia. I mean, this is such a much to do about nothing. But NPR actually says that Donald Trump Jr. lied about this, and then they do a retraction. And this is the retraction. An earlier version of this story, an earlier tweet, mischaracterized an answer Donald Trump Jr. gave to Senate investigators in 2017. The story has been updated and the tweet has been deleted. And so then Donald Trump Jr. Retweets that and says, I guess this is as close as I'll get to an apology where yet another bombshell bites the dust. Pro tip, don't just rush to publish anything thinking that it's the got you so desperately want it to be. CNN has the market corner on that. Let them own it. Okay. This is so true. How often does NPR or CNN or these other news agencies rush to judgment on something like this where they make a conservative look good or a liberal look bad? Okay, it's just, I can't think of any. I'm sure it happens every once in a while. It's just so rare. Okay, their bias and their contempt for conservatives is just so obvious. It's so blatantly obvious. But that's okay. We're all biased in one way or another. It's good to just have, conservative news agencies and liberal news agencies. They need to be labeled as such, okay? And that's okay. They can report their stories, and then we can read them and try to put them together. And then we've got analysts who we trust to try to separate truth versus fiction. This is I found this great article in the Daily Wire by Walter Williams. I mean, this is totally amazing. I'm just kind of jumping all over the place today, kind of trying to get caught up here. And he mentions, he starts off, what do you okay, this is entitled Black Education, What Makes Sense? What do you think of the proposition that no black youngsters should be saved from educational rot until all can be saved? Black people cannot afford to accept such a proposition. Actions by the educational establishment, black and white liberal politicians, and some civil rights organization appear to support the proposition. Let's look at with the help of some analysis. So Thomas Sowell works this national report card in 2017. This is on fourth graders in New York State public schools. 32% scored below basic, with 32% scoring basic, 27% scoring proficient, and 9% scoring advanced. When it comes to black fourth graders in the state, 19% scored proficient. Okay, so that is down from 27% of overall, and only 3 were advanced. That's down 3% from 9. So Dr. Sowell compared these to this New York State ELA test. 32% of Brooklyn Wilford Floyd Elementary School third graders scored well below proficient in English and language art. But at Success Academy Charter School in the same building, only one did. Okay, so this is incredible. So this Academy Charter School in the same building in Brooklyn, same building, had incredible academic achievement. At William Floyd, okay, so that's the other part of the school in the same building, the public school, 36% were below proficient, with 27% being proficient and none being above proficient. By contrast, at the Success Academy, only 17% of the third graders were below proficient, and 70% being proficient and 11% being above proficient. Among Success Academy's fourth graders, 51% and 43% respectively scored proficient and above proficient. And those scores were 23 and 6%. Okay, so the bottom line here, this charter school is just, the kids are blowing away the public school kids. Okay, so this is, there are other schools. The same thing is happening. Okay, these other schools that are including the same area of kids, same families and stuff, same neighborhoods, okay? Same type of kids, okay? Blacks and Hispanics constitute 90% of the students at Success Academy, okay? So he goes on and says, there's little question that charter schools provide superior educational opportunities for black youngsters. In a story the New York Times ran about charter schools earlier this month, it was entitled, "With Democratic Wins, Charter Schools Face a Backlash in New York and Other States." John Liu, an incoming Democrat state senator from Queens, said New York City should get rid of large charter school networks. And then these other Democrats said the same thing. Okay, it's just not fair. This other lady said, over 100,000 students in hundreds of these city charter schools are doing well on state tests, and tens of thousands of children are waiting on a list spot. Okay, so that's, the New York Times actually said that. Okay, yeah, I'm not interested in privatizing our public schools. This is what State Senator-elect Julia Salazar, Democrat, Brooklyn, said. So this is just really amazing, okay? The NAACP demands that charter schools cease expelling students that public schools have duly. So the Democrats do not support charter schools at all. This is just shocking. This is just really shocking. Walter E. Williams is going, this is retarded. This is totally ridiculous. So it's just a really cool article talking about how awesome charter schools is. Of course, I wish we could privatize all the schools. I wish we could give the money back to the parents and privatize. There is so much we can do in the educational process. So much creativity. But the public schools have just got, it's like a monopoly. They have a monopoly. There's so much that we can do to improve education. A big change of gears here. I saw a picture of Vladimir Putin's got a new presidential limousine. Oh yeah, it's really fancy. And it kind of looks like Donald Trump's The Beast, which these are basically trucks, right, that make it look like limousines. This is pretty nice too. It looks pretty cool. Kind of looks like a little bit of a Rolls Royce there. So Vladimir trying to staying relevant the best he can. This is a really cool on howmuch.net on articles World Map of Billionaires 2018. This is a map with a bunch of dots. And so on this map, all these dots represent a billionaire. So the United States has 585 billionaires. China has 373 billionaires. South Korea 44, Hong Kong 67, India 119, Russia has 101, Germany has 123. This is just really, really interesting. Israel has 20, Saudi Arabia has 12. Boy, in the Middle East, there's hardly any billionaires. And the Middle East and North Africa are 2.4% of the billionaires are there. And 20 are from Israel, 12 Saudi Arabia, 7 United Arab Immigrants, Lebanon 7, Egypt 6. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how many billionaires are in the United States. It's really great. Capitalism works. It's truly amazing. Latin America has hardly any. You got 42 in Brazil, 16 in Mexico, 11 Chile, 6 Peru, 9 in Argentina. Yeah, let's see. So if you look at Africa or South Africa, let's see. I don't see any at all. So anyhow, you could see where billionaires thrive. It's great. Billionaires employ a lot of people and make the world a great place. An interesting article on Breitbart talking about the Hatch Act. You guys know what the Hatch Act did? I was doing a little bit of research on this. The Hatch Act of 1939. It's an act to prevent pernicious political activities. So this is named after Senator Carl Hatch of New Mexico. And so it was amended in 2012. So basically what the Hatch Act says is that you're not, its main provision prohibits employees in the executive branch of the federal government, except the president, vice president, and certain designated high-level officials, from engaging in some forms of political activity. It went into law on August 2nd, 1939. So anyhow, Breitbart has a story about the Hatch Act and mentioning federal employees warned not to engage in Trump-resistant activities at work, okay? So federal employees can't get real political, okay? So in general, the article says, federal employees are free to express opinions about government policy or individual politicians, but they are not allowed to advocate for or work for partisan organizations or causes while in the workplace. Then, okay, so you could say, I like President Trump, I don't like President Trump, but you can't just like keep pushing like the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. So there's difference in there. So you got to be careful there. This article talks about, with this memo, it says, we understand that the resistance and hashtag resist originally gained prominence shortly after President Trump's election in 2016 and generally related to efforts to oppose administration policies, the memo states. However, resistance, hashtag resistance, similar terms have been inextricably linked with the electoral success or failure of the president. The office added that because impeachment also means those impeached can never hold federal office again, resistance support is essentially a statement against President Trump's 2020 re-election, and that, they say, violates the Hatch Act, which prevents federal workers from engaging in political activity on the job. So federal workers have to be careful. This is great. This is great. Of course, they should be doing our nation's business. They should not get super political. I mean, we see this with like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, their text back in, and how Peter Strzok, who's a lead investigator for the FBI, involved with the Clinton investigation, with the Trump administration investigation, and he's telling Lisa Page that, he will not allow Donald Trump to be president and things. I mean, he is actively, that was totally against the Hatch Act. And so I think that's good that federal government workers, can't get super political. Okay, they need to stay biased. I've talked to military leaders and how sometimes they don't even want to vote because they're trying to stay apolitical because they're going to follow one president, and then after the election there could be another president from a different party, and they need to respect him and follow his orders. So that's important. Well, meanwhile at UC Berkeley, so the student government there, they voted to aid the migrant caravan. Who knows whatever happens to that. The caravan's kind of fallen out of the news, huh? Then it's kind of fallen apart. I guess the latest I heard from them, they were on some kind of hunger strike. They're leaving these other countries because, there's no food and no jobs and no work. But now they're on a hunger strike in Mexico. It's really odd. But they claim that anyone told not to aid the migrant caravan, they're ignorant and violent. Okay, once again, we're just going to destroy the narrative, any kind of debate. If you don't agree with me, you are ignorant and violent. Okay. I guess they don't agree to disagree, right? No, I guess they're going to take politics super personal. Oh, well. This is amazing what's going on in France. Okay, Macron, the little Macron, he is in deep trouble. His popularity right now is itty bitty itty. And it's worse right now because what does he do? What does he do? He decides to level this huge gas tax on diesel, which I think all their cars are diesel there. Germany, I think, is banned diesel cars, but a fuel tax, a gas tax. So he puts through a big gas tax and the people freak out. They are burning Paris down. They're called yellow jackets. Why are they called yellow jackets? Because they're all wearing these yellow jackets. Well, where did they get these? You might ask me, Philip, where did they get these yellow jackets? Well, they're in their cars. And you might ask me, well, why does everyone have these yellow jackets in their cars? Because it's a law. In France, they're very bossy. It's a top-down government, central planning, and they think if your car breaks down, you got to put this little yellow reflective jacket on so you don't get run over as you stand outside your car that's in distress. And so they're all well, it's not that funny because some people have been hurt and killed with these protests, but they're burning Paris down. They're setting ambulances on fire because they're union. I mean, they are mad. The police officers are taking their helmets on and supporting the protesters. So this has been going on for weeks, and the media covers it, and they don't want to talk about what started this, the gas tax. And you might ask me, Philip, why? What's the tax for? Well, the tax is for, I'll tell you, it's for climate change. It's just to punish you from driving your car because you're burning all those carbons and you're destroying the earth with those evil gases coming out of that car. And by the way, hold your breath too because CO2 is coming out of your breath and that's evil gas and it's going to just ruin the country. And so they're freaked out over this. I don't blame them. Macron is in big trouble. He says he's going to hold the line on this, and what does he does? He caves. Oh, we're going to postpone the tax for 6 months. Totally caves. Totally. What a joke. What a clueless politician thinking people want to pay for this. This is the bottom line and the dirty little secret with this climate change. No one really cares about this stuff. No one really cares. Most people have looked at the science. They've read about global warming or global cooling or whatever. In the 70s, it was global cooling and then global warming. And now it's climate change because we're not warming anymore. And now they say it's the cause, we're causing forest fires and, all of this stuff. And people are realizing there's no science behind any of this. A bunch of theories. You can't prove these. The models don't even prove anything. They can't even predict the weather tomorrow. None of the climate models work for the past. I mean, CO2 goes up and sometimes the temperature goes down. It doesn't even correlate always with temperature. CO2 levels used to be sky high when the dinosaurs were running around. Plants were enormous as they were munching on all of this CO2. So this people don't want to pay for climate change. I mean, it's in theory, it's hypothetical. We don't even know if this, we've got other real problems. Okay? People should keep their money for real problems for themselves rather than some big heavy-handed government just taking their money for climate change. Oh, climate change. This is just a leftist policy. Climate change just fits into the leftist paradigm of just top-down government, bossy, just like in France, they boss you around. You got to have your little yellow jacket in your car in case your car it breaks down. I mean, they are super bossy. And I tell you, this is just coming back to roost here. This silly climate change. I told you guys about the poll that if you were willing to pay an extra $10 like in your electric bill, would you do that for climate change? Okay, no one wants to do that. No. They tried that. No. People don't want to pay for climate change. They just want to virtue signal and talk about, how they're prettiest and how they're doing their great job in saving the planet as they fly around in their private jets. I mean, they don't care. They do not care. It's too bad because France used to have a bunch of nuclear reactors producing a bunch of clean energy, and they decided not to do that anymore because nuclear was bad. Ooh. So that's silly. If they really cared about CO2 levels, they would be building nuclear power plants all over the place. That's the solution. Wind and solar, it's less than 1% of all the energy. I mean, it's just, no. It takes more energy to build those wind turbines. And then the turbines, the generator motors break after 5 years. You got to build another one. Oh, those things. People fall off of those things and die. Oh, they don't produce hardly any power. Neither does solar. It's such a joke. Oh, speaking of jokes, let's talk about Ocasio-Cortez. I know we probably shouldn't make fun of her too much, but she's irresistible. She's got a tweet up. Apparently, I don't even know if she's taken it down yet. But she said she said $21 trillion of Pentagon financial transactions could not be traced, documented, or explained. $21 trillion in Pentagon accounting errors. Medicare for all costs $32 trillion. So I think that's a 10-year figure. That means 66% of Medicare for all could have been funded already by the Pentagon. And that's before our premiums. Oh, yeah, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Some people call her occasional cortex. Apparently, occasionally she uses her cerebral cortex. But anyhow, this is being debunked by everybody. Even the libs think this is redundant. The New York Times, the Washington Compost. I mean, PolitiFact, even the libs are just tearing this thing apart. Okay. And so the New York Times wrote, for starters, the combined Pentagon budget from 1998 to 2015, okay, so that's a 17-year period, was $9.2 trillion. Not $21 trillion. I mean, the entire budget, all of the money you spent. So where did the $21 trillion figure originate? It comes from the analysis of Pentagon's unsupported journal voucher adjustment system, okay? And it says the terms refers to improperly documented accounting adjustments that are made. In other words, $21 trillion is the total value of adjustments made to the Pentagon's financial records over those years that cannot be traced. So you can transfer like $10 into your account and then $10 out and then $10 in and $10 out and $10 in. And you could have $40 of transaction costs, but you're only using $10. Okay, so a lot of this is not real money. This is not the same as $21 trillion in spending. So I guess she doesn't figure this out. This Norquist guy, comptroller, explained in testimony to Congress in January that adjustments occur after money is spent because we have systems that do not automatically pass data from one to another. Okay. So Ocasio-Cortez is just completely clueless, okay, on the amount of money. And so well, whatever. She's only 28. I mean, she's learning and stuff. So Bob Mueller, okay, some people are saying Bob Mueller's wrapping this up. Who knows? So General Flynn, Mueller filed a memoranda on Tuesday, which is yesterday, and he recommended a lenient sentence for Michael Flynn, the convicted. And so what is Michael convicted? Did Michael Flynn, was he colluding with the Russians? Oh no, it's just a process crime. No, Mueller does all this research and stuff and knows more about what Michael Flynn knows than he knows. And then Michael Flynn tells his side of the story, and Bob Mueller goes, no, you didn't. No, we know what you did. You didn't do that. No, that's perjury. You cannot lie to us. That's against the law. You're arrested. We're going to throw you in jail because that's a process crime. So that's what they did to him. But apparently Mueller says he's been so good and helpful that we don't think he should go to prison. I mean, it's just the point that these process crimes are not big crimes at all. This is just little petty stuff. They're going through their taxes. They're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and then they blackmail them and say, we're going to throw you in jail in case you until you turn on Trump. You turn on the Donald. Let's talk about the Donald's tweets. So he's going crazy today. He's tweeting about OPEC, and he wants to keep the oil flowing and keep prices less. He's looking forward to being with the Bush family. He says this is not a funeral, it's a day of celebration. Bush 41. He's talking about working with China on fentanyl. This is he calls it a horror drug and stuff. You remember we use this drug all the time in hospitals for treating pain, for using it in conjunction with surgery and the pain of surgery and anesthesia. It's a great drug, okay? It's a great drug for pain that you're having from an operation while you're asleep in the OR or waking up or in the hospital with a lot of pain. Like any of these pain drugs, if you take them when you're not hurting, okay, and you take it to get a high effect, then they can be very addicting, very bad. He's talking about China. I love how Donald is so open about how he's working with China. And what he's trying to do is get China to buy American goods. So he's trying to sell our goods to China. China's agreeing to this. And Donald's never, he says China does not want tariffs. So Donald is saying, hey, you're using 40% tariffs on cars. That's not fair. We're going to put 40% tariffs on the stuff that's coming in from China to America that we're buying from you. So he's really trying to level the playing field and have fair trade. I think that's awesome. And I love how Donald tweets. I love how open he is. Yes, we see gaffes and stuff in these tweets and typos. It's great. I love it. It's coming right from him. All you have to do is follow Donald's Twitter feed. You know exactly what he's up to. It's great. Then he does chime in on the Yellow Jackets in France, in Paris. He goes, I'm glad that my friend Emmanuel Macron and the protesters in Paris have agreed with the conclusion I reached 2 years ago. The Paris Agreement is fatally flawed because it raises the price of energy for responsible countries while whitewashing some of the worst polluters. Charlie Kirk tweeted on the 3rd, and Donald retweeted it. And Charlie Kirk said, there are riots in socialist France because of the radical leftist fuel taxes. Media barely mentioning this. America's booming. Europe is burning. They want to cover up the middle-class rebellion against cultural Marxism. We want Trump being chanted through the streets of Paris. This is just totally awesome. And Donald on the 4th was tweeting about this. The last story I wanted to cover is it looks like non-citizens in California, how many percent are taking welfare stuff? 73%. 73%. And how many citizens in California are on welfare? 35%. I mean, so it's almost double. Okay, so the immigrants are coming here. They're illegal. They're not citizens. They're on welfare. They send a lot of this money back to Mexico and their other countries of origin. I mean, this is $250 billion a year, Donald tweets, in the illegal immigration. And he just wants $25 billion for the wall. He says it'll pay for itself in 2 months. Let's get it done. So I think he's really making a very good point there about illegal immigrants and how much on the dole they are and how much they cost our country. I wanted to close just with how I started today and talking about George Herbert Walker Bush and all the good things that he did. And really, in particular, how we come together at a passing of the president. I was trying to think when the last president passed away, and I remember Ronald Reagan's funeral, and I can't remember if that was the last one. Jimmy Carter's still alive. And before Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford. And so there was not a big funeral for Gerald Ford like there was for Reagan. And I think Ford did pass away after Reagan, if I remember right. Can't remember. But what a great opportunity for us to come together as Americans. This state funeral where we have the President of the United States and the former Presidents of the United States. And of course, Bush 41, his son 43 is president also. It's just great for the country to be together, and we can reflect and be unified and in common. And we're all common in remembering all the good things that George Herbert Walker Bush did. That is awesome. So we can focus on the personal and reflect and find joy in finding the common bonds between us. And how we're common bonds between us being Americans and how unifying that is. I just love that thought. I think that's really great. Thank you so much for listening. This is Philip Koerper. This is the Philip Koerper Show, copyright 2018. Please subscribe at iTunes or SoundCloud, or you can watch the video on YouTube and you can go to philkoerper.com for more information on that. Have a great day. Thanks.